People seem to really enjoy a mystery, and these haunted houses provide a lot of it. Many things have happened in these homes over the years. People seem to mysteriously snap and do unthinkable things to those they love, though we may never know why their spirits stick around to remind us of those horrific events. Coming in at number 5, we have the Lizzie Borden house in Massachusetts. Lizzie Borden was an American woman who became the center of a sensational trial in the United States. In 1892, she was accused of killing her father and stepmother. Her family was well off and lived in the town of Fall River in Massachusetts. Her father had remarried 3 years after Lizzie's mother had died. Lizzie also had an older sister, Emma. They often argued with their father regarding their finances and their stepmother. Lizzie was well liked in the community and spent her days involved with various charity work. Her father was not well liked though. He was known to be stubborn and cruel. On the morning of August 4th, 1892, Mr. Borden left his home for work. Left in the house was Lizzie, the stepmother, and a live-in maid. Her sister was out of town at the time. When he returned from work, it was reported that he sat down in the living room and had a nap. No one knows exactly what happened to Mr. and Mrs. Borden next, but Lizzie gave her version of events. Lizzie claims to have returned home at around 11:15. Upon her return, she found her father brutally attacked on the sofa. Upstairs, his wife's body was found mutilated. It was later confirmed she had died around an hour before her husband. There was little evidence to what had actually happened to the Bordens. Lizzie had suspicious activity that made it seem likely that she was involved. On August 3rd, Lizzie had purchased some poisonous acid. It was also found that she had burned some of her clothing on the stove, and in the days following the murder, the maid was also suspected of the killing. She was seen leaving the home carrying an unexamined parcel in the evening following the murder. No weapon was ever found, though they did suspect the axe that was found in the basement. Lizzie was arrested and tried, but was acquitted due to the lack of evidence. It was widely believed she was guilty. She was shunned by her community. She would stay in the family home until she died of old age in 1927. The house is reportedly haunted by both Lizzie's spirit and Mr. and Mrs. Borden. Coming in at number 4, we have Merchant House Museum in New York. The Merchant House is the only 19th century family home that has been preserved. The house was built in 1832 by a wealthy merchant. The merchant Seabury Treadwell raised his family in the home. He had 8 children. The home was never empty as the family constantly grew, with 4 servants, nieces, nephews, cousins, and aunts all staying at the home from time to time. Most of the family lived there until their old age. The youngest daughter, Gertrude, lived there alone for 24 years after the death of her older sister. She was eccentric and became obsessed with holding on to the family home in its original state. The neighborhood around her home was run down. Many of the homes around it were demolished. As you can see today, the home stands alone in its elegance. After she died in 1933, a distant cousin purchased the house to ensure it was not demolished. He turned the home into a museum, a time capsule of what it was like to live in the 19th century. Still has the original possessions from the family. Not everything in the home was idyllic. There are some ghosts that linger in the home, other than those of the family members who refuse to leave even in death. There is a famous story, the thief who tried to steal from the family. It was said he broke in one night while the family slept. He stole a lot of jewels and valuables from the home. He was attempting to make his escape through a hole he had made in one of the weaker walls. As he squeezed through the hole, the wall collapsed on top of him. He did not survive. He was found by the family in the morning. The thief's brother apparently demanded justice. He claimed that the wall should not have been made so poorly. It was the bad quality of the wall that killed his brother. Obviously, this was not seen as a valid concern. The thief's ghost is reported to still be lingering in the home. Luckily, the house is now a museum and not a hotel, so you shouldn't have too much trouble with the ghost. There have been various sightings. Someone saw one of the daughters sat in the garden. As they walked towards the girls, she disappeared. A man covered in a dust like soot had been seen around the kitchen, believed to be the thief. Many guests feel cold spots around the house. At least the majority of the ghosts are friendly. The Treadwell family are just enjoying their beloved home. Coming in at number 3, we have Villa de Vecchi in Italy. The Villa de Vecchi in Italy was built around 1854. It has the nickname the House of Witches. The house was riddled with tragedies from day one. Count Felix de Vecchi was head of the Italian National Guard. He was considered a decorated hero. He wanted to build a dream home for him and his family. He recruited architect Alessandro Sedoli. It took around 3 years to build the home. Alessandro died a year before the villa was completed. This would come to be seen as the first bad omen. Of course, at the time, it was simply an unfortunate event. Once finished, the home was a great mansion. It was outfitted with all the modern conveniences of the time, including indoor heating. No expense was spared. The home had extensive gardens and promenades. Unfortunately, the family would not be able to enjoy their lives in the idyllic home. Sometime in 1862, the Count returned home from a day's work. He found his wife had been brutally attacked. It was too late to save her. More than that, his daughter had been taken. He had started a lengthy search for his daughter, using his best men to search as far as they were able. The daughter was never found. Later that same year, the staff found the Count in his study. He had taken his own life from the guilt of losing his family. The villa was passed from owner to owner for a few years. By the year 1960, the home would be left permanently uninhabited. The house fell into ruin. The walls have fallen and vandals have destroyed much of the interior. There are now rumors that occultists use the home for rituals. The home is said to be strongly connected to spirits and ghosts. Many entities have been spotted here. If you were to visit the home, you'd be able to sense those who have passed, along with the other spirits who have been called on by rituals. In at number 3, Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. Located in San Jose, California, the Winchester Mystery House is a mansion that was once the private residence of Sarah Winchester, the widow of firearm magnate William Wirt Winchester. The Victorian mansion is renowned for its size, its architectural curiosities, and its lack of any master building plan. Since its construction all the way back in 1886, the home was claimed by many to be haunted by the ghosts of those killed with Winchester rifles. Following the death of both her husband and infant daughter, a medium told Sarah Winchester that she should leave her home in New Haven and travel west, where she must continuously build a home for herself and the spirits of people who had fallen victim to Winchester rifles. So she headed for California, seeking a new location and a hobby during her depression. In 1884, she purchased an unfinished home in Santa Clara Valley and began building her epic mansion. She opted to not use an architect, so the building is a little peculiar. The building contains numerous oddities, including doors and stairs that lead to nowhere, windows overlooking other rooms, and stairs with odd-sized risers. Environmental psychologists have actually attributed the odd layout itself to the feeling of the house being haunted. Prior to 1906, the house was 7 stories high, which is insane. However, after the earthquake that same year, the home was reduced to just 4 stories. In 2017, the Winchester Mystery House actually debuted their first tour in 20 years called the Explore More Tour. This takes guests through the rooms never before open to the public, and explores the rooms left unfinished at the time of Sarah Winchester's death. In at number 2, we have Ancient Ram Inn, Gloucestershire. This is one of 2 locations from the UK that is renowned for being one of the most haunted hotels in the entirety of England. The Ancient Ram Inn is a former pub located in Watton under Edge in Gloucestershire. The inn's original use was to house the masons and other builders employed to construct the church nearby. However, it was later taken up as the dwelling of the first recorded vicar. Following this, it was then converted to an inn. Now, many visitors have reported that when you enter the old inn, there is a definite feeling of dread and foreboding that envelops you. One person even stated, I quote, "The atmosphere was awful. I can only describe it as pure filth, dark and heavy." And on top of that, visitors have also reported, while ascending the staircase to the first floor, being thrown up the stairs by some invisible force. On the first floor of the Ram Inn is said to be the most haunted room in the home, the Bishop's Room. It was said that a medium pushing open the door was once lifted off the ground and flung across the room. Many ghostly apparitions have been seen in that room. A ghostly cavalier has been known to materialize by the dressing table, and 2 monks have been seen shimmering in one corner. Many witnesses have also heard terrified screams of a man who was reportedly murdered in the inn by having his head thrust into a fire. The attic of the inn is also renowned for its ghostly activity, with it being said that an innkeeper's daughter was murdered in the roof space back in the early 1500s, and people who have slept in the Bishop's Room have reported hearing the sounds of something heavy being dragged across the floor above their heads. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Borley Rectory, Essex, England. Borley Rectory was at one point in time regarded as the most haunted house in England, which is pretty damn terrifying considering the country's lengthy history. The house was built in 1862 to house the rector of the parish of Borley and his family. However, when 1939 rolled around, it was badly damaged in a fire, and then in 1944 it was ultimately demolished. However, the paranormal activity and creepy occurrences on the property date back all the way to the 1860s, during which time many locals recounted hearing unexplained footsteps within the home at the time. Then on July 28, 1900, 4 daughters of the rector, Henry Dawson and Ellis Bull, saw what they believed to be the ghost of a nun about 40 yards from the house. They attempted to talk to the ghost, however, it disappeared as they got closer. Jumping forward in time, Harry Bull passed away on June 9, 1927, resulting in the rectory once again becoming vacant, and the following year the Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife moved into the home. Shortly after the family moved in, they reported a variety of incidents, including the sounds of servant bells ringing despite them being disconnected, lights appearing in windows, and unexplained footsteps. On top of that, Smith's wife also reported seeing a horse-drawn carriage in the middle of the night. The hauntings at the Borley Rectory became so widespread that the Daily Mirror sent a reporter to the home to write a handful of articles detailing the strange goings-on. The Daily Mirror brought along Harry Price, a paranormal researcher, on June 12th of that year, and immediately the supernatural occurred. Stones were thrown, as well as a vase and other objects. Spirit messages were supposedly tapped out from the frame of a mirror, and as soon as Price left, the event ceased. As you would expect, the family left the home not long after this. Then, like I said, on February 27th, 1939, the new owner, W.H. Gregson, accidentally knocked over an oil lamp in the hallway, resulting in the house being severely damaged by fire, and then ultimately it was torn down. The place is said to be so haunted that Ed and Lorraine Warren housed one of the Borley Rectory bricks in their Connecticut museum. Well,
next up is the LaLaurie Mansion. If you think Elizabeth Bathory was evil, just wait till you hear about Delphine LaLaurie. This mansion is said to be one of the most haunted places in New Orleans, and that is saying a lot, because New Orleans has a bit of a reputation for being rather paranormally active. The LaLaurie Mansion looks like a regular fancy house in the French Quarter, but the things that happened inside were anything but normal. Back in the early 1830s, Madame Delphine LaLaurie and her husband Dr. Louis LaLaurie were part of the city's upper class. Delphine had the appearance of your typical wealthy socialite. She hosted parties, wore expensive clothes, and smiled for the neighbors. Elegant was probably the word most would use to describe her. But that changed. See, behind closed doors, things were incredibly grim. She owned enslaved people, which at the time was legal, but even by the standards of the day, people started noticing that something was very wrong. Neighbors would notice that her servants looked unusually thin. They'd often have bruises as well, and then they'd just disappear altogether. One day, a child fell from the roof after reportedly being chased up there by Delphine. Authorities finally forced her to give up her slaves, but this didn't do anything. Her relatives brought them back and returned them to her. Then in 1834, a fire broke out at the mansion. The woman who started it was an enslaved cook who later admitted she was trying to die rather than being taken upstairs again. Firefighters arrived and broke into the locked slave quarters, and what they found was a complete horror show. People were chained up, starving, injured. Some had been experimented on. A few were barely alive, others were found buried on the property. When the public found out, they were furious. A mob stormed the house, trashed the place, and tried to find LaLaurie, but she'd already escaped. If you're waiting to hear the part about her finally getting her comeuppance, it never happened. She fled to Paris and never had to face any consequences. Today, the house has been remodeled, but it still stands. Some claim it's cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who suffered inside. But even if you don't believe in ghosts, the real history behind that house is disturbing enough on its own. And finally, we have the Sultan's Palace, also in New Orleans. This luxurious home was built in 1836 and was bought by a Turkish man claiming to be a sultan. Now, as soon as this man moved into this French Quarter home, things got completely out of hand, to put it very lightly. There were constant parties, he was always playing loud music, and he had this harem of women with him all the time. They'd apparently arrived from Turkey. But as to exactly what was going on in that house, there were only rumors, because no local had ever been invited inside. One morning though, after a very stormy night, a man was walking down the streets of the French Quarter and noticed that there was this red liquid trickling down the steps from the Sultan's palace. It was streaming like a small river running through the cracks in the cobblestone. The man ran to the police, and what they discovered inside the home was a complete massacre. There was immediately this overwhelming metallic scent in the air from all the red stuff that was on the walls, on the floor, and there were body parts everywhere. A lot of them had been dismembered, limbs were scattered around the place. They continued through the house only to find more bodies until they made their way out to the courtyard. The soil was heavy and muddy from the large storm the night before, but sticking out from it was a hand with its fingers spread as if it was reaching to the sky for help. It was the hand of the Sultan, it turned out. He'd been buried alive. Obviously, The question was now, who did this? Some said that the Sultan wasn't really the Sultan at all, that he was the Sultan's brother and made off with all his money and his women, and so his brother hired a group of mercenaries to get rid of him. But till this day, it's still a mystery. Some people say the house is still haunted.
Number 5 on this list is Panola Hall. Panola Hall is a beautiful Georgian home that is deeply haunted and also something that you could buy if your heart so desired. Rocket Home says, Panola Hall was originally built for Henry Tripp in 1854, but its most popular resident is simply known as Sylvia. Said to be a young, beautiful, shy spirit, Sylvia typically appears on the stairwell with a rose in her hair and wearing a white hoop skirt dress. Her presence also brings about a strong smell of roses. The beautiful antebellum home is decorated with heart pine floors, 12-foot ceilings, a second-floor balcony, and a secret tunnel. At the time of writing, this home has a pending offer. Now, I looked into this home, guys, and apparently you can buy it for around $700,000, which, in all honesty, when looking at the property and everything that it has to offer, is a pretty good deal. Now, maybe they are factoring in the whole haunted by a spirit thing into the price, and that's dragging it down a little bit. Granted, this doesn't seem like the worst ghostly presence ever. Like, she smells like rose petals, so that's something that's pretty nice, and she's shy and pretty and probably pretty nice by the sounds of it. I do think that I would get triggered every time I smelled roses though. Like, think about if you were on the toilet and then you just got the sudden smell of roses. Now you know that Sylvia the ghost is watching you do your business, and I'm not sure if I would vibe with that so much. I don't know. This one is definitely a mixed bag for me. Sylvia seems nice, but I still think that I like my home ghost-free if it's up to me. Number 4 on this list is the Pillars Estate. The Pillars Estate is a real blast from the past. Like, this home hasn't heard that we're in the year 2022 yet. Rocket Home says, sometimes a homeowner loves their home so much they can find it difficult to leave even in the afterlife. Such is the case, many believe, for the Pillars Estate, an 1878 mansion in Albion, New York. The homeowner we're referring to is Myrtie Carr, who moved into the home with her husband William in the 1940s. It's said that Carr loved the home so much that she purportedly told one of her daughters that when she died she would never leave it. According to the current homeowner, Tony McMurdy, she's kept that promise. McMurdy, who has spent more than 10 years carefully restoring the home to its original splendor, has had his fair share of haunting experiences, including hearing doorknobs jiggling and seeing the apparition of a woman lying in bed. Despite the paranormal activity, it's believed that Carr's presence is warm and friendly, and that she's happy to see the care McMurdy has put into her beloved home. The Pillars Estate in Albion, New York is one of the oldest homes in the area. When you turn that antique key and step inside, you go back in history. The restored home is filled with antique furnishings, many of which are included in the sale of the home. McMurdy also added an extravagant ballroom featuring a grand staircase, dark wood features, chandeliers, and a bar. So not only has the home not recognized it's 2022, neither has Carr apparently. I personally have absolutely no interest in lying in bed and then being woken up by the feeling of a ghost lying right next to me. My bed is a sacred, ghost-free zone, and not even a cool 1850s house will make me give up on that. Number 3 on this list is the Wyckoff Villa. The haunting for the Wyckoff Villa is kind of up in the air right now as to if it's even haunted in the first place. I'll tell you guys the history of this and then let you guys be the judge. Rocket Home says the Cape Vincent, New York home was built as a summer estate for William Wyckoff of Remington typewriter fame. Unfortunately, Wyckoff died of a heart attack the first night he spent in the home. The villa then went to his son, who sold it to General Electric after the family lost its fortune during the Great Depression. However, the company abandoned the home during World War II, and it has sat vacant ever since, more than 70 years. A ghost of its former self, the once ornate home has been stripped of its doors, windows, stained glass, and marble features. But even as a shell of a mansion, the Wyckoff Villa is stunning. Its new owner, whoever that may be, will need to commit to a true labor of love, as this home will require a complete rebuild. The property shows promise, though, as it includes close to 7 acres of land and 3 waterfronts. So this home home has definitely seen its fair share of stuff over the years. We got depression, war, a bunch of stuff that could easily have left a spirit behind. Not to mention the place was abandoned for decades, and who knows what sinister things happened during that period of time. Because it was abandoned for so long, there aren't too many paranormal stories, but locals still think something is off about this place. If you want to find out for yourself, well, you're free to buy the place.
Coming in at number 2, we have Feliz Mansion in Los Angeles. Very little is known about the Feliz Mansion before it was bought by cardiologist Harold Perelson for his family. The family seemed to live there happily until 1959. Harold lived in the home with his wife and 3 children, the oldest named Judy. It was reported that Perelson was in a financial crisis. He had sunk thousands into a medical device he had invented only to have it stolen by a colleague. Things went from bad to tragic for the family on December 6, 1959. It's reported that Harold lost his mind. He woke at around 4:30 a.m. He took a hammer to his wife. He then went to his daughter's room. He tried to do the same thing to Judy, but failed. She managed to escape screaming. She ran to the neighbors where she could call the police. The 2 younger children woke up during the screaming. Harold told them to go back to sleep and that they were having a nightmare. Harold then went back to his study. He took 2 doses of something and 31 pills before lying down. He had passed by the time the police and ambulance arrived on the scene. The house has sat untouched since this happened. The house was purchased by a family, but they chose to leave everything in the house as they found it. They never spent a single night in the home, but came and went with storage. It is rumored that if you go to visit the house, you can still see the Christmas tree in the living room, surrounded by the presents neatly wrapped, as well as a Life magazine on the coffee table along with other signs of the time. And finally, in at number 1, we have Louis Family Mansion in Taiwan. The Louis Family Mansion, or more commonly known as Mingsong Ghost House, is one of the most haunted locations in Taiwan. The house, built in 1929, is situated in the countryside near Chiayi. The home was once a beautiful 3-story, perfect for any family. Looking at the home today, you can see the old charm, but the house is overgrown and a tapestry of trees that have claimed it over time. Louis Rongyu, an affluent merchant and landowner, bought the house for his family. It was rumored that he had started an affair with the maid. This affair went on for years without anyone knowing anything of it. Finally, the maid got tired of being a secret and confronted his wife. Louis Rongyu broke off the affair, choosing his family. The maid was reportedly distraught about what had happened. She jumped from the 2nd-story balcony into the well below. Some say another family member might have pushed her to save them the public embarrassment. After this, the ghost of the maid haunted the family every night, terrorizing them. She would not let them rest. It was not long before the family felt they had to move out, leaving their home behind. They never sold the property, it was simply left to rot. Perhaps they did not want anyone else to be terrorized by the angry spirit they had created. Dark tourists continue to visit the house. There have been various sightings of the ghost since then. People are warned not to spend the night, as this is when she looks for vengeance. Would you risk it? I certainly wouldn't.
The Monroe Demon House in Hartford City, Indiana. It started like every other investigation. A team of ghost hunters entered an old house in Indiana called the Monroe House, a place whispered to be cursed, but within minutes, something in the basement made them bolt. Cameras were dropped, equipment left behind. No one wanted to go back inside. In that basement, there was a crawl space hidden behind a sealed door. Locals said the air inside was thick and metallic, and that strange growling sounds could be heard even from the street. Now, when investigators entered, they reported hearing whispers coming from the walls, and one of them claimed to see a shadowy figure crouched in the corner. Later, bones were allegedly found in that crawl space, small, broken, and human. No one ever confirmed where they came from. Now, during a later investigation, 2 well-known paranormal investigators spent 72 hours inside the house. They described seeing orbs moving on their own, feeling cold spots rush through their bodies, and watching doors slam with no one near them. One investigator admitted that the house made him physically ill. Locals say if you walk by at night, you can actually still see the upstairs window glowing faintly, even though the power was cut off years ago. The Poplar Hill Nanny House in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Now, it was supposed to be a peaceful new beginning. In 2014, journalist and musician Tom Maxwell and his wife, Brooke, found what seemed like their dream home, a beautiful, historic 2-story in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Now, locals called it Nanny, but almost from the moment they unpacked their boxes, the house began to turn against them. Brooke was the first to notice the strange things happening. She said it started with the feeling that someone was standing behind her, watching her. Then one night, she woke up, paralyzed with fear, to see a tall, hooded figure leaning over her bed. Its arms were unnaturally long, its hands thin and bone-like. It just stared at her, and then all of a sudden, it was gone. Now, from that moment on, on, their dream home became a nightmare. Doors had been locked, they were found open in the morning. Footsteps would creak along the hallway upstairs when everyone was downstairs. The house had a heartbeat. It breathed at night. Tom tried to dismiss it. Old houses make noises, right? He told himself that over and over and over again, but soon even he couldn't explain what they were actually seeing. One afternoon, a glass flew off the kitchen counter and shattered in front of them. Now, on another night, a door slammed so hard it cracked the frame in a room no one had entered all day. Then came the scratches. Brooke stepped into the shower one morning only to cry out in pain as long red welts appeared across her back, right before Tom's eyes. It looked like something invisible had clawed her. And they both basically just stood frozen in shock. Now, after that, they actually began to see them, the apparitions. Now, Tom called them the spook parade. A woman in a 19th century bonnet appeared at the top of the stairs. A gray mist shaped like a man hovered by their daughter's room. Sometimes they'd catch sight of shadowy figures gliding silently from one wall to another and disappearing through them. Now, desperate, they brought in local paranormal investigators, but the team didn't last long. One man claimed that as soon as he entered the house, his equipment stopped working and his chest tightened as if someone was pressing against him. He described feeling a freezing breath against his neck, then hearing a voice whisper, "Leave now." Another investigator, a woman, ran out of the back room crying, saying something had brushed her hand in the dark. None of them ever came back. The Maxwells tried every form of protection they could think of: prayers, sage, salt lines across doorways. Tom even sprinkled salt along the baseboards and window frames, saying, if the house wants to be evil, fine, but it's not taking us with it. But the activity only got worse. Cold air would pour out from beneath doors, and the smell of perfume, old and powdery, filled the hallways at night. The family's dog would bark furiously at corners of the room where nothing stood, and the longer they stayed, the sicker they became. Headaches, fatigue, constant dread. After 9 agonizing months, the Maxwells couldn't take it anymore. They packed up in the middle of the night and left the house behind. Tom later said, "We didn't move out, we escaped." Now, to this day, the house still stands. Locals swear that even now, if you drive by late at night, you might see a light flicker on in an upstairs window, even though no one lives there.
In at number 5, we have Mudhouse Mansion. The Mudhouse Mansion is believed to have been built sometime between 1840 and 1850. There is a lot of mystery around the home and the different tales of what has happened here. In 1892, a man bought the home for him, his wife, and their 3 children. Once they moved into the home, the neighbors did not see them. They wanted to wait for them to settle in before going to introduce themselves. After a few weeks passed and they still didn't see the family, one neighbor went in to investigate the home. She saw a woman dressed in white at the second floor window. She did not move, she just stared at her. She went back the next day to see if there had been any change. She saw the woman again in the same place. She repeatedly checked in on the home, but on the 10th day she called the police as the figure did not move in any of the time that had passed. The police broke down the door to investigate. They found each family member dressed in white hanging from the staircase. The figure that she had seen all of those times was the wife hanging in front of the window. They had been hanging there for several weeks. There is folklore that the house is the original location of the witch Bloody Mary. They say the land is cursed and anyone who lives there will perish. The house remained empty for the rest of its years. It attracted ghost hunters. One woman claimed that she was on the second floor when she heard a loud group people on the 3rd floor. When she went to ask them what was happening, she found she was alone in the home. The voices stopped and no one was on the 3rd floor. The house was demolished in 2015 due to growing fears from the surrounding area. The home had been empty since the 1930s due to fear of what had happened here. If the folklore is true, any home built on the land will also carry the curse. In at number 4, S.K. Pierce Mansion. Sylvester Pierce was a wealthy businessman from Massachusetts. He started his business S.K. Pierce & Sons Furniture Company. The company was extremely successful for the family. In the late 1880s, Pierce decided he should build a mansion befitting his fortune. The mansion he built was a marvel for its time. The home was 7,000 square feet with 10 bedrooms. It took 16 months and 100 men to build this home. The family moved in swiftly as the grand home was completed, but their celebrations didn't last long when his wife Susan fell down the staircase a few weeks after moving in. She sustained many injuries but did not die from the fall. She did die from a bacterial illness she got in one of her wounds. After a year of mourning, Pierce remarried Ellen. This was widely talked about as she was 30 years younger than him. Pierce passed away in 1888, leaving behind his new wife and the 2 sons they had together and his son from the previous marriage. When Ellen passed, the sons argued constantly over who would take the home and business. The Great Depression destroyed the business, leaving only the mansion to decide. Eventually it was given to the youngest son. The mansion went through hard times as the family lost the fortune. Edward decided to turn the mansion into a boarding home. The home was used for drinking, gambling, and other activities people wanted to do in secret. There were even a number of murders that occurred. One woman was strangled in one of the second-floor rooms by another boarder. A Finnish immigrant burned to death in the master bedroom in 1963. There is also another story of a young boy who drowned in the basement when he ran off from his family. Since these days, the house has been regarded as haunted. There is no shortage of people who has passed here. There are also claims a dark entity inhabits the basement and may have been the cause of the young boy wandering off. Guests have experienced voices talking to them as they sleep, furniture moving without anyone being in the room, as well as shadow people caught in the corner of guests' eyes. The house is now open for ghostly tours, but no one may stay the night as it is considered too dangerous.
Number 3 on this list is the Priestley House. The Priestley House is one of our classic old homes that's just literally haunted. It was built all the way back in 1852 in Canton, Mississippi. It is a beautiful home on the outside and in, but it's host to a lot of paranormal characters. Our main characters at this home are the original owners of the place, Dr. James Priestley and his wife Susan Priestley. Both of them died in this home many years ago under mysterious circumstances. Nowadays, the new tenants of this house, whoever they may be, all report things falling and objects flying all over the place. They've even seen the ghosts of 2 people who claim to be Dr. James and Susan. They're always causing havoc and scaring those who live here. It seems as if they believe they are the rightful owners of this house and nobody should be allowed to stay in it even though they've passed on. It hasn't stopped people from trying to live here up until this point, but pretty much everybody who goes here eventually leaves soon after based on how haunted it is. I would recommend setting up camp in another home if I was you. Number 2 on this list is the Pink Palace. Well, I'll be honest folks, I think the name here, the Pink Palace, is enough to turn me off from buying the place, but that's just me. Rocket Homes says, purchase this light pink home and you might also get your very own guardian. That's because the ghost that haunts this home is protective of the property and those who live there. Believed to be a previous owner named Avery, the spirit has appeared to residents just before bad things happen in the home, like a fire in the kitchen or a cinder block crashing through a window. Both times, Avery possibly saved their lives. Along with this added benefit, the home itself boasts 6 bedrooms, original woodwork, stained glass windows, and an in-ground pool. And you won't have to worry about waterproofing the basement. That was done this year. So in this rare case, the haunting is actually a bit of a benefit. This haunting may actually save your life if you purchase this house and something inexplicably goes wrong. However, you also need to live in a place called the Pink Palace. And if you guys hadn't guessed, it's pretty freaking pink on the outside. In fact, I don't think it could get more pink if it even tried. So I guess we kind of have a mixed bag on this one. And finally, number 1 on this list is One LaVetta Place. Believe it or not, this home is literally legally haunted. Rocket Homes says, located on a tree-lined dead-end street in Nyack, New York, One LaVetta Place is as famous as its past celebrity owners, including director Adam Brooks, singer Ingrid Michaelson, and rapper Matisyahu. The home gained notoriety when the New York Supreme Court declared it legally haunted in 1991. The ruling was the result of Stambovsky vs. Ackley case, in which homebuyer Jeffrey Stambovsky sued seller Helen Ackley over not disclosing the haunting prior to the sale and fought to rescind his offer. The court ruled in Stambovsky's favor and the home made history. While there has not been any reported hauntings in recent years, perhaps you'll experience the paranormal activity the Ackleys publicly claimed to have had decades ago. Before selling the home, Helen and her family had reported multiple incidents of poltergeists from the Revolutionary War shaking the beds, slamming doors, and leaving gifts. That's actually insane, guys. A house gets declared haunted in the court of law. Like, that seems like something from a movie. Now, this is going to be an expensive purchase. Considering it is the first home ever to be legally classified as haunted, a lot of people want to own it, meaning that the price is pretty high. But if you had the money, then you could in fact purchase it. Why you'd want to have a bunch of Revolutionary War ghosts slamming doors and bothering you all the time is beyond me, but I guess to each their own, right?
Coming in at number 5, Monte Cristo Homestead, New South Wales, Australia. Monte Cristo Homestead is a historic homestead in the town of Junee, New South Wales, Australia, constructed back in 1885 by local pioneer Christopher William Crawley. It is a double-story Victorian-style manor which is located on a hill overlooking the rest of the town. The family remained in the home until around 1948. The house then stood empty under the care of several caretakers until 1963, when it was purchased by Reg and Olive Ryan, who restored it. Some of the ghosts inhabiting the home are said to include a young child who was supposedly dropped down the stairs, a maid who fell from the balcony, and a stable boy who was said to have burned to death. However, visitors to the homestead say that the most active ghost is the son of the caretaker, who was found curled up next to the dead body of his mother. Very creepy indeed. The homestead now operates as a museum and tourist attraction, advertising itself as Australia's most haunted house. The homestead was also featured in television shows such as A Big Country back in 1977, the travel show Getaway in 92, the paranormal-based game reality show Scream Test in 2000, Ghost Hunters International in January 2010, and My Ghost Story in 2013. Coming in at number 4, Chateau de Brissac, France. The Chateau de Brissac is a French chateau located in France, with the property being owned by the Brissac family, whose head bears the French noble title of Duke of Brissac. It was originally built as a castle back in the 11th century, and it was rebuilt in 1611, and its construction made it the tallest chateau in France. The home is notoriously haunted, with some of the ghosts spotted at this castle-turned-hotel, including La Dame Verte, Green Lady, who was apparently the illegitimate child of King Charles VII. Anne was later murdered by her husband in the chateau in the 15th century after he caught her having an affair. Visitors often report seeing her ghost in the tower room of the chapel wearing her green dress with gaping holes where her eyes should be. She is also reported to roam the castle and make moaning sounds, startling visitors. The chateau is currently open to the public for tours and overnight stays in its guest rooms, and the luxurious gilded theatre hosts the annual Val de l'Or festival. In at number 2 we have Villisca Axe Murder House in Villisca. The small Iowa town of Villisca doesn't have much to offer tourists except for a night of terror at the Villisca Axe Murder House. Back in 1912, the whitewood framed house was the site of a horrifying crime that left an entire family dead by axe. Shortly after midnight on June 10, 1912, a stranger hefting an axe lifted the latch on the back door of a 2-story timber house in the little Iowa town of Villisca. The door was not locked. Crime was not something you worried about in a modestly prosperous Midwest settlement of no more than 2,000 people. The visitor was able to slip inside silently and close the door behind him. Still carrying the axe, the stranger walked past one room in which 2 girls lay sleeping and slipped up the narrow wooden stairs that led to 2 other bedrooms. He ignored one in which 4 more children were sleeping. He crept into the room in which 43-year-old Joe Moore lay next to his wife Sarah, raising the axe high above his head so high it gouged the ceiling. The man brought the flat of the blade down onto Joe. Then he struck Sarah before she had time to wake or register his presence. Leaving the couple, the killer went next door and used the axe on the other residents in the room. Once again, there is no evidence that they woke before they died, nor did the assailant or any of the other people in the home make sufficient noise to disturb Catherine's 2 friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, as they slept downstairs. The killer then descended the stairs and took the lives of the Stillinger girls. What happened next marked the Villisca killings as truly peculiar and still sends shivers down the spine a century after the fact. The Axeman went back upstairs and beheaded everyone in the home, leaving the faces of all 6 members of the family unrecognizable. The Moores were not discovered until several hours later. When neighbors didn't see the family wake in the morning, they called for Villisca's marshal, Hank Horton. That set in train a sequence of events that destroyed what little hope there may have been of gathering useful evidence from the crime scene. When a shaken doctor emerged, he cautioned members of the growing crowd outside, "Don't go in there, boys, you'll regret it until the last day of your life." Many ignored the advice, as many as 100 curious neighbors and townspeople tramped as they flew through the house scattering fingerprints. It is probably due to this damage to the crime scene along with the lack of knowledge on such large crimes that the killer was never found. It could have been one of the noisy neighbors or someone passing through time, but no one will ever know. What we do know is that there have been sightings of the family's spirits since, and the house continues to be a main attraction for dark tourism. And finally, in at number 1 we have House of Danger in New York. New York's Greenwich Village has some of the most desirable real estate in the world, except for this house on West 10th Street, known as the House of Danger. The townhouse is said to be haunted by the ghosts of 22 people who lived or died within its walls, including the tragic story of a girl who was killed by her adopted father. Being New York City, however, the house has a celebrity pedigree too. Said that author Mark Twain stayed in the house back in 1900 and returned for the occasional visit. The house seems to have started earning its reputation reputation gradually after the Borman family stopped living there. The first recorded incident of bad luck happened in 1897. Cycling celebrity Fred Andrew, the new owner and occupier of 14 West 10th Street, had a moment of bad luck. During his residency, as described in the New York Times, of August 9, 1897, Andrew had a moment of reckless bicycle riding that caused him to hit a person. The person suffered a broken leg and Andrew was subsequently arrested. Jan Bryant Bartle and her daughter took up residency of a spacious apartment on the top floor in 1957. Bartle reported almost immediately that a monstrous moving shadow would often follow her around the home. One time she writes that she had seen a ghostly figure of a man standing in a hall. Bravely, she reached out and tried to touch whatever she was seeing. She felt something, but nothing like she had felt before. She described it as a substance without substance, chilly and damp. Bartle was a true believer and took the proactive step of employing a paranormal expert to investigate what could be causing these terrifying realities for the scared residents. The investigator confirmed what the couple had believed from the start. The investigator said that they were upward of 22 spirits at the House of Danger. Besides Mark Twain, he mentioned additionally a woman in a white dress, a young girl, and a grey cat. On November 2nd, 1987, New York City witnessed a genuine tragedy at the House of Danger. The passing of Lisa Nussbaum was so horrific it caught everyone's attention. Around 6:40 a.m., 911 operators got a pressing phone call from children's author and editor Hedda Nussbaum. She said that her daughter Lisa wasn't breathing, so an ambulance was sent to Greenwich residence right away. When the paramedics arrived, they were greeted by a very disturbing scene. They found Lisa unresponsive on the kitchen floor and her brother Mitchell tied up in the home. Paramedics were regrettably unable to revive Lisa on their way to the hospital. Later, her autopsy revealed the cause of death was repeated blunt force trauma. Hedda and Joel were both arrested and subsequently charged with first-degree murder. Currently in private ownership, the building is resided in today and continues to add stories of hauntings to the legends of paranormal activity in the House of Death. The stairwell continues to be the nexus of the ghostly activity in the building. The dark and wide antique stairs are where many of the ghosts still make their appearances.
First up, we have the Edmonton Haunted House. Now, I'm not clear as to the name of the owner of this house or the exact location, only that it is or was in Edmonton. This is a very old story dating back to 1909. So the owner would rent the house out, but they had a hard time securing regular tenants as each person who stayed there would rush out of the home oftentimes in well under a month. An article at the time is quoted saying, "From time to time, parties of different nationalities have approached the owner of the house and rented it sometimes for a year, other times for only a few months. But generally, at the expiration of a few hours, they disappeared, bag and baggage, without even calling up the owner for a refund of the monies paid. The owner and his agent unaware of their departure until the next month's rent was due. Tenants would experience horrific paranormal activity in the home, with one story going that a tenant had locked himself in his room with furniture pressed up against the door. Somehow, the door opened on its own, and from the dark hallway beyond, he heard this terrible, disembodied groaning sound. Another story goes that an Asian businessman rented out the home with 4 of his workers. They were planning to operate a laundry business from the home. They didn't even make it through the first night and ran out of the place screaming in the middle of the night, only showing up again the next morning to grab all their things. Next up is the Los Feliz house, which sat abandoned in LA's Los Feliz neighborhood for a long time. It was only just recently sold in 2020. I won't give the exact address for obvious reasons, but this house was pretty infamous for a disturbing incident on December 6th, 1959. Dr. Harold Perelson and his family lived at the home. Perelson was a pretty successful guy, obviously. I mean, he owned a mini mansion, but at some point his mental state started to deteriorate, and the nail in the coffin was when he was screwed out of the rights to a new syringe that he'd invented, having invested a ton of money in it. This is seemingly what threw him over the edge, and on that night in December, he snapped, killing his wife in her sleep with a hammer. Then he moved on to his eldest daughter's room. As soon as he struck her with the hammer, though, she let out a scream, pleading for her life as her father told her to lay still and keep quiet, while the other siblings woke up, all running out into the hallway to find out what was going on, and miraculously, they all managed to escape. Neighbors had heard the commotion and they phoned the police. By the time authorities arrived at the home, though, Dr. Harold had taken his own life. A copy of Dante's The Divine Comedy was left open on his nightstand, with the opening passage of the page reading, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. What was said to be the most haunted house in England? Well, if you were to ask people back in the day, they'd probably tell you about this place called the Borley Rectory. It was infamous for supposedly being haunted long before it burned down in 1939 and was demolished for good in 1944. Built in 1863 for Reverend Henry Bull, the place quickly got a reputation for all the strange things that would happen there. The land itself was supposedly cursed thanks to a legend dating back centuries. The story goes that a monk and a nun fell in love, tried to run off together, and got caught. The monk was executed and the nun was sealed up alive in a wall to die. So when the rectory was eventually built on that same ground, people believed the place was just no good. People who lived there over the years would tell stories about all your classic haunted house stuff, hearing unexplained footsteps, seeing faces in windows, hearing bells ringing on their own. Some also said they saw ghostly figures wandering the halls. It got so intense that the Daily Mirror sent out an investigator, Harry Price, in 1929. He was one of the first people to take a scientific approach to ghost hunting. He brought cameras, fingerprint kits, and devices to track temperature and movement. Well, he claimed to see some stuff and hear some stuff. He'd see objects fly across rooms, hear weird whispers from the dark, empty rooms. Then Reverend Lionel Foister and his wife, Marianne, moved in. And it didn't go well. Marianne especially seemed to be targeted. Forget seeing or hearing things, she'd tell her husband that she'd be slapped and scratched and pushed, but not by anything she could see. Messages would also appear scrawled across the walls that no one could explain, and they only showed up when she was around. And the couple didn't last long there and ended up moving out, but the investigator, Harry Price, he stuck around, trying to make sense of what was going on. During one seance, Price claimed that he learned the names of the monk and nun from the original legend. Another session ended with a spirit predicting that the rectory would burn down, and in the wreckage the nuns' bones would be found. Well, a year later, the place caught fire, and in the ruins the body of a young woman was discovered in the cellar. Nobody could say for sure who she was, but she was given a proper burial. After that, the haunting supposedly stopped.
In at number 3, the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri. The Lemp Mansion was built in 1890 in St. Louis. It was originally owned and built by William Lemp for his growing family. Lemp's father, Adam Lemp, was a German man who moved to the US in 1839. He became very successful when he opened a grocer and started to produce and sell authentic German lager. All things seemed to be going well for the Lemp family. Adam passed down his company to his son, William Sr. William went on to expand and grow the Western Brewery Company started by his father. He married his wife in 1861 and they moved into their new home in 1890. They had 4 children together, all boys who went on to work for the company. It was their youngest son, Frederick, who he had hoped to groom to inherit the entire company. In 1901, Frederick died due to heart failure from complications of his diseases. William Sr. became depressed from this. He lost his will to work. He slowly declined. His family's effort to console him did nothing to bring him back. In 1904, William Lemp took his own life by gunshot. With 2 tragedies in the family, they still kept going to try and recover from their losses, but there was still more to come from them. A few years later, his wife developed and passed from cancer, leaving the children, the home, and the company to run. William Jr. took over the company in his father's absence. He married, and they had 1 son, William III. Jesus. A few years later, she filed for divorce. She won custody of their son. The company also took a hit during the Prohibition when they had to shut down. They had to sell their trademark and the brewery complex was sold at auction. William struggled to deal with all of his immense loss. He did not see a way to recover all he had lost. He took his life in the same room as William Sr. had all those years prior. The house is said to now be haunted by the Lemp family and all of their tragedies. In at number 2, we have Hotel Cecil in Los Angeles, California. Hotel Cecil, or Stay on Main in LA, is probably one of the most well-known haunted locations. While it's not a house, it is a home for many people, as the building is not only a hotel but a residence. The hotel became the center of the Netflix documentary The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, which looked into the disappearance of Elisa Lam. The hotel opened in 1924. It was designed to be a high-end hotel for those traveling on business. The hotel quickly fell from the image they initially had. They advertised monthly and more permanent rates but now offer as short as hourly. Within the first 10 years of the hotel being open, many lost souls checked into the hotel, who were never planning to check out. The first incident occurred in 1927, 3 years after opening. Guest Percy Cook had taken his own life. His wife had left him taking their child. 4 years later, a man was found in his room after ingesting poison. Within the following 3 years, 2 more people took their lives. This quickly gained the hotel a dark reputation. People seemed to be drawn to the hotel as their final resting place. From 1937, the passings became more violent. People's lives started being taken by others. It was said all of the tragedies had cursed the hotel. Since 1937, 14 more people have passed away at the hotel. It is even rumored that in the case of Elisa Lam, she may have experienced hauntings in the hotel before she disappeared. There was footage of her in a lift performing what is thought to be a ritual where you invite spirits to join you. This was the last anyone would ever see of her. She was later found in one of the water tanks on the roof. Could this have been connected to the ritual, or maybe she saw something else during her stay? And finally, at number 1, we have Jean Harlow House, Los Angeles, California. When Jean Harlow was 18, she married Paul Byrne and moved into her famous Hollywood home. Jean was an actress famous for her roles in Double Whoopee and The Saturday Night Kid. She was seen as the latest blonde bombshell. Her personal life, however, would never be as successful as her acting career. Her marriage to Paul was her second. She married for the first time when she was only 16 years old. Her marriage to Paul was surprising to the public. He was 22 years older than her and not considered to be attractive. Their marriage only lasted 2 months before ending in tragedy. Paul Byrne had been married previously to Dorothy Millett. Paul hadn't spoken of Dorothy for years. His secrets finally caught up to him when he was found by his butlers deceased in his bedroom. He had a bullet wound through his head and a letter left next to him explaining why he ended his life. Authorities recovered the note and ruled the death by his own hands, but the staff pointed the fingers to Dorothy. She had visited him a day earlier. Jean had no knowledge of this. The police went to interrogate Dorothy only to find she had jumped from her hotel balcony. Jean sold and left the home after the incident. 5 years later, in 1937, Jean was on set filming Saratoga. She was found in her dressing room passed out on the floor. She had suffered from kidney failure and died at the age of 26. In 1983, a hairstylist named J.C. Bring bought the former home. At the time, he was with Sharon Tate. Tate often stayed in the home. As most of us know, Sharon Tate also met an horrific end. She was a victim to Charles Manson while pregnant in 1969. Many people believe the house is cursed. Before her passing, Sharon Tate was questioned about the home. She was questioned in an interview about the suspected hauntings. She did experience some paranormal activity during her time there. She told them that she saw a ghostly man in her bedroom. She believed it to be Paul Byrne. She saw a second figure tied to the staircase. She said the second figure had a slit on their throat. She said it almost looked like her. Tate called it a premonition. Could Byrne have been trying to warn her? Either way, we know that the home houses the spirits of those who passed there. In at number 5, we have the Franklin Castle in Ohio. The high Victorian home has been a fixture of the city's west side for over 100 years. It was built in the 1880s by grocer turned banker Hans Tiedemann. Although his wealth was significant, Tiedemann's life was filled with tragedy. A distressing number of his immediate family members would die in this house. The story goes that the construction of the castle's elaborate turrets, prominent gargoyles, and increasingly large network of rooms were an attempt to distract his wife from the ceaseless amount of death. That is, until she too suddenly passed away. After Tiedemann sold the property, it spent several decades as a German cultural center. The tales of hauntings picked up in the 1960s, as reports of surging electricity, the sound of babies crying, and a mysterious woman in black gained steam. Human bones were found in a closet in 1975. It was never confirmed who the remains belonged to, but with the number of deaths within the home, it is believed to be one of the Tiedemann's family. As the years have gone by, tales of Franklin Castle have grown, and now include an axe murder, a mass shooting of in the basement, and the alleged hanging death of Tiedemann's illegitimate daughter. Many stories focus on heinous acts that supposedly took place in tunnels below the house. After a fire, the home laid abandoned for several years before the current owners purchased the place in 2011. In at number 4, we have the Sallie House in Kansas. If you're into ghost hunting shows, you probably already know this famous haunted house. The unassuming home in Kansas is rumored to be the dark lair for a demon who takes on the form of a little girl because of her family's bizarre experiences there. Built in the mid-1800s in the growing community of Atchison, 2nd Street has seen its fair share of owners through the years, including the family of a 6-year-old girl named Sallie, who died in the home during a botched appendicitis surgery. It wasn't until the mid-1990s when Sallie's story first gained both local and national attention, when then owners Tony and Deborah Pickman lived in the home and began noticing strange occurrences, including attacks on Tony, unexplained voices, and apparent burnt finger marks upon mysteriously burning candles. Sallie isn't some harmless ghost. ghost. Theories around her malevolent presence in the house, as well as some evidence of satanic rituals in the basement, suggest that Sallie is in fact a demon disguised as a young girl. It is believed that the family was desperate in their grief and decided to perform the ritual in an attempt to bring back their daughter. Instead, they invited a demon into the home and offered them her body as a vessel. Since then, the demon has terrorized the home. Paranormal investigators have confirmed the house is haunted, but none have so far been able to cast out the demon. The Sallie House is open to the public if this sounds like the holiday location for you. In at number 3, we have Bell Witch Farm in Tennessee. In the early 1800s, John Bell bought a tract of farmland along Tennessee's Red River. Bell and his family thrived on the farm until they started to see strange-looking animals around the property, most notably a dog with a rabbit's head. From that point on, the family was beset upon by unseen forces, largely targeted at Bell and his daughter Betsy. They experienced physical attacks, heard unexplained noises, and even spoke with the entity. What was the Bell Witch? Like most supernatural stories, certain details vary from version to version, but the prevailing account is that the Bell Witch claimed to be the spirit of Kate Batts, a mean old neighbor of John Bell who believed she was cheated by him in a land purchase. On her deathbed, she swore that she would haunt John Bell and his descendants. The human interactions with the spirits date all the way back to 1817. Former President Andrew Jackson was quoted as saying, "I had rather face the entire British army than to spend another night with the Bell Witch," after he and some of his troops spent a night at the Bell's farm. Over time, so many people traveled great distances to visit the Bell's home that it had to eventually be torn down for safety purposes in the latter part of the 1800s. The historic Bell Witch Cave has preserved some of the artifacts from the original cabin, such as a chimney stone and an iron kettle. You can see these articles along with some other artifacts, news articles and photos from the time John Bell and his family resided on the farm when touring the reconstructed Bell cabin. If you're interested in paranormal activity, or if you're a history buff, then the Bell Witch Cave and farm will definitely not disappoint.
Number 2 on this list is the Uhli Home. So many of these places are haunted by their original owners, and this one is no different. Rocket Home says, built in 1890, the Uhli Home still has many of its original features, including its Uhli bricks. The brickwork original owner Stefan Uhli was known for around Silver City, New Mexico, where the home is located. Stefan and his wife Susanna were pioneers and two of the first settlers in the area, which served as a tent city during the mining boom. It's believed that Stefan and Susanna still haunt the property today. The Victorian home requires some renovation work but has a number of great features, including a balcony, basement, and one-bedroom apartment attached by a breezeway. So if you buy this house, you get to experience the ghosts of two pioneers. Just absolutely swell. It's said that these two spirits will often cause tons of problems at the home in an attempt to get rid of you from it. So even though you may buy this home and it's good to go, within a few months you'll have renovated it tons of times over because these spirits keep messing it up. Just on a pure investment stance alone, it doesn't seem like the best idea to buy this one. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Lake Forest Schwepp Mansion. A Lake Forest mansion. This place is just made to be the setting for a horror movie. Rocket Home says, built in 1917 in Lake Forest, Illinois, the mansion was a wedding gift from John Shedd to his daughter Laura and his new son-in-law Charles Schwepp. The stunning property had 27 rooms, ornate chandeliers, and carved wooden paneling. It was so exquisite that the Schwepps entertained royalty on more than one occasion while living in the home. Unfortunately, Laura passed away in 1937, and 4 years later, Charles committed suicide in the home and left an ominous note that read, "I've been awake all night, it's terrible." After his death, the home sat vacant for 46 years until Donna Denton and her then husband purchased it. They were the only people to own the Lake Forest Schwepp Mansion and once joked that the home was big enough to share with any spirits who lived there. Good thing, because the mansion was said to be haunted by Charles, Laura, and several servants who lived in the home. Jeez, well now I'm gonna be up all night as well, Charles, because your spirit isn't gonna let me fall asleep. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this show before, but there's a comedy show out there right now called Ghosts. I haven't watched it personally, but just based on the commercials, these are the vibes that I get. Now from my understanding, the ghosts in the show are supposed to be fun and silly, and these ones in real life aren't that way inclined. But maybe whoever owns this house should just play that sitcom on repeat and hope that the real life ghosts get the idea. I don't know, it's worth a shot. Number 5 on this list is the Los Feliz Murder House. This house is definitely not the one that you'd want to be purchasing, folks. We are dealing with a full-on murder house with this one. Rocket Home says, on December 6, 1959, cardiologist Harold Perelson murdered his wife with a hammer, then killed himself in their beautiful Spanish Revival home in Los Feliz, California. After the infamous murder-suicide, the home was sold but never lived in. In fact, the interior wasn't cleaned out for years following the incident, preserving that night in time and adding to the home's creepy aesthetic. Trespassers in the past have reported finding old magazines and books, canned food, and cleaning supplies. Rumor has it that there was even unwrapped presents sitting under a Christmas tree left standing in one of the rooms. Today, the house is stripped completely to its studs, a perfect starting point for anybody looking to remodel the home's 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and 3rd floor ballroom. However, while the Los Feliz murder house is for sale, it may be difficult to purchase. The seller wants cash or hard money offers and may offer seller financing. So for just the low price of a ton of cash money, you can purchase a completely stripped down murder house. Yeah, I don't think so, guys. Even the seller is weird here, wanting cash for the home. Like, everything about this house just screams creepy and haunted and not the place that I'd want to live in. Number 4 on this list is the Dakota. The Dakota is witness to one of the most heinous crimes of our time. Rocket Home says, New Yorkers may recognize this historic Central Park apartment building's iconic mix of architectural style, while Beatles fans recognize it because of its history. Not only was it the residence of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, it was also the place where Lennon was fatally shot by Mark David Chapman in 1980. Throughout the building's existence, residents and staff have claimed to see the ghosts of a little girl, a crying lady, and Lennon himself. However, supposed hauntings and an alleged curse won't keep buyers away from the luxurious 9-room apartment for sale inside the building. The residence features 12-foot ceilings, original moldings, and city views from floor to ceiling windows. You may even have a famous neighbor. Past residents include Laurel Bacall, Judy Garland, and Bono. Yoko Ono still lives in the Dakota today. But even if you love the apartment and can afford the $10 million price tag, there's one thing that may keep you from moving in: the co-op board. Upon receiving your application and background check results, this group of people chooses whether you can live in the Dakota or not, and they are apparently scarier than any spirit haunting the building. The board has a history of being choosy and has rejected such celebrities as Madonna, Alex Rodriguez, Cher, and Billy Joel. Yeah, so even though you can buy this home, if you are super rich, there's also the board factoring into this, and apparently they're pretty picky. Like, if Madonna can't seem to get an invite, then I highly doubt they're going to be opening the doors for me anytime soon. Either way, $10 million is a hefty price tag for a place as haunted as this one. I'd much rather travel the world with $10 million than get haunted by the ghost of a little girl or John Lennon himself.
The Ammons Demon House, this is in Gary, Indiana. Now, this isn't just another haunted house story. This is one that left police officers, priests, and social workers traumatized. The year was 2011. LaToya Ammons and her 3 children moved into a modest rental home on Carolina Street in Indiana. Now, it looked perfectly ordinary, but it would soon be called one of the most terrifying true demonic cases in modern history. It started with flies. Now, in the dead of winter, thick black flies swarmed around the porch, clustering on windows and doors. No matter how many they actually, hurt, they kept coming back. Then came the sounds: footsteps on the basement stairs, heavy breathing in empty rooms, and doors slamming themselves shut. One night, LaToya's mother, Rosa Campbell, woke up to a dark shadow pacing in her bedroom. She said it felt like someone was standing over her, staring at her. It was pure evil. Now, what happened next pushed the story into legend. LaToya's children began to change. They'd talk to things that weren't there. They'd growl in deep voices that didn't sound human, and one day, in front of medical staff, one of her sons reportedly walked backwards up a wall, then flipped over and landed on his feet. Witnesses, including a hospital nurse and a DCS worker, confirmed what they saw. Priests were called in, exorcisms were performed. Police officers who investigated claimed they heard footsteps echoing in the basement when no one was actually inside. Now, one officer's recorder malfunctioned, then began playing distorted screams when replayed later. When renowned paranormal investigator Zach Bagans heard about the case, he bought the house outright to investigate it himself. But from the moment his team arrived, things went horribly wrong. Crew members fell sick, cameras, stopped for no reason. One investigator collapsed, claiming he felt something enter his body. He described a very, heaviness in the room, like the air itself was pressing down. He said he saw shadowy figures darting across the hallways, and once, something unseen slammed the door with such force that the actual hinges bent. After documenting everything he could, Bagans made a shocking decision. He had the house demolished demolished, completely torn down, claiming it was too dangerous to remain standing. I mean, whatever's in there, he said, should never have a chance to escape. Even skeptics couldn't deny that something unexplainable happened there. Police reports, social worker testimonies, and church records all confirm strange occurrences. And locals say after the demolition, nothing will grow on that lot. No grass, no weeds, nothing. The land is still empty today. A quiet patch of dirt surrounded by chain link fence, and residents swear they still hear voices at night drifting through the air where the house once stood. The Smurl Haunting in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. For over a decade, the Smurl family lived in a nightmare that blurred the line between haunting and hell itself. From 1974 to 1989, Jack and Janet Smurl claimed their quiet family home was infested by something inhuman. It started with knocking sounds, flickering lights, and the stench of rotting flesh, but soon the attacks became physical. Their dog was thrown across a room, their beds would shake violently in the middle of the night. Janet said she was grabbed, scratched, and even attacked by something she couldn't see. Now, when famed demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren investigated, they described the case as one of the darkest they'd ever faced. Now, during their time, their door slammed so hard the hinges bent and mirrors cracked spontaneously. Some paranormal researchers who visited the home reportedly refused to spend the night. One priest called it something beyond demonic. Eventually, the Smurls moved, but the house remained, and neighbors still claim they hear screams echoing from inside when the wind actually slows down. Bellicanin House in Scotland. Now, long before ghost hunting TV shows existed, there was the Bellicanin House, a 19th century mansion so feared it was called the most haunted house in Scotland. Now, the story began with Major Robert Stewart, who lived there in the 1800s. He believed in reincarnation, and he was convinced he'd return as a dog after his passing. Now, to prevent that, he reportedly unalived his own dogs so no other spirit could use them as vessels, which is insane. Now, after his demise, locals said the dogs came back for revenge. I mean, guests heard barking in empty halls, felt cold noses kind of brush against their legs, and saw shadowy shapes moving at night. Now, when Britain's Society for Physical Research investigated, basically in the 1890s, their investigators were overwhelmed. I mean, they documented apparitions of a ghostly nun, phantom footsteps, and sudden crushing cold that forced them out of rooms. One researcher quit mid-investigation, calling the energy inside unbearable. Another refused to ever discuss what she witnessed. By the 1930s, Bellicanin House was abandoned, and when it burned to the ground in the 1960s, locals said the fire glowed an unnatural green. So even in ruin, people still avoid walking across the land where it stood. These aren't your average haunted houses. These are places where reality seems to break, where investigators, priests, and skeptics all reach their limit. I mean, from basements full of bones to Indiana to ghostly nuns in Scotland, these stories remind us that sometimes there really is something in the dark that doesn't want to be found. So the next time you watch a paranormal investigation and think, I could handle that, just remember, these are the houses even the ghost hunters ran from.